Okay, guys, so welcome everybody. This webinar has been organized by the Weekly Fasting Group. It's an international WhatsApp group of people who cultivate the habit of fasting once a week for 24 to 36 hours. If you find this idea fascinating, if it appeals to you and you are still not in the group, you will find my WhatsApp number below this video. My name is Arik. You are welcome to contact me, to send me a message with your name, and I will happily add you. And today we have with us Ivana, our detox, rejuvenation, and healing expert. She's going to enlighten us on biofilm, radiation, detoxing heavy metals, and many other interesting things. So Ivana, over to you.
Hi guys. So, it's interesting how this webinar came together, because when Arik first asked me to come up and do it about a month ago, I had no idea what I was going to talk about today. And when I show up for these interactions with you, what's most important is that I am inspired by the subject matter and that it is interesting and exciting to me. Now, I know that this may sound sort of selfish, but if I am not excited, then you are not getting the best of me. So at the time when Arik contacted me, I had been working with emotional and behavioral stuff. And so I floated that idea as the mental health lab. But I always trust my gut, and I trust in the perfect synchronicity that comes from being in alignment with my core self. So still having 4 weeks before this set webinar date, I really wasn't fully committed to the mental health topic. But at the same time, I wasn't going to force anything or sort of push myself to come up with a better, more interesting idea. And so I told Arik that if some other topic inspires me by the time this webinar rolls around, then I would let him know. And so I just went about my business. And a part of that business was a parasite and heavy metal detox. I had been refining the parasite protocol that I had put together, an extension of which is, of course, the metal detox. What got me thinking about heavy metals to begin with is that by having done iridology for a few years now, I noticed that some people, myself included, have low blood cholesterol, yet they present with either the cholesterol or the sodium ring in the brain area, and sometimes with both. And this, of course, got me thinking about what is really going on here. And the intuitive download I got was that this is a matter of heavy metal deposits in the head. Now, at the time, I was also experiencing problems with my ears again, which is something that I've dealt with consistently since early childhood in the form of horrendous chronic ear infections. And to this day, as I go through detox, I will experience a range of symptoms with my ears that sort of come and go. And so this confluence of facts made me curious as to how heavy metals might affect my ears, and specifically which metals would be at play here. I intuitively felt that there was a connection between the cholesterol ring, the heavy metal toxicity, the hard swollen lymph nodes, and the ear infections. I just needed to do some more research and collect data to sort of connect the dots and understand the mechanism behind this phenomenon. So I started looking into the affinity that certain metals have for specific tissues, which in my case is the ears and the head. What I found is that the ears can in fact accumulate a variety of metals, including lead, manganese, cobalt, and cadmium. And of course, it's common knowledge that aluminum and mercury love the brain. So about 3 weeks ago, I decided to go on a heavy metal cleanse with a cilantro and chlorella based tincture together with transdermal EDTA cream. Now, I can't say that it's been a fun ride, but it has definitely been enlightening. When it comes to the EDTA cream, it's recommended that it's applied to thin-skinned areas that don't have much fat. So I figured since I was trying to get heavy metals out of my head, I would put this cream onto my neck and face. And I made sure to massage it into my lymph nodes as well. Well, what do you know? My face got so swollen that I looked deformed. My lymph nodes all around my ears, front and back, blew up and got really red and hot to the touch. And the nodes behind my ears felt as big and as hard as frozen peas. Until now, I didn't know that it was possible to have 5 different types of pain simultaneously in the same area. But apparently it's a thing. So number 1 was the constant throbbing inside my ears and the lymph nodes. The second was in my outer ear. And I'm talking about the shell, which was so swollen and painful that I couldn't even touch it. And this is something that I had never experienced before, because it hurt as if I had sustained heavy physical trauma to the ears. And it was really intense. Now, being a side sleeper, this was pure torture because I couldn't lay down on my side when going to sleep. Not only that, but my ear canal, both the inner and the outer portion, got swollen to such an extent that I couldn't even insert a Q-tip into it. Then the third type of pain was the type that would show up intermittently on top of that constant throbbing. And it was this very sharp stabbing sensation that felt like I was being violently stabbed in my ears with an ice pick. Then the fourth type of pain was in my upper and lower jaw bones, which was reminiscent of the pain of my impacted and infected wisdom teeth. This was interesting because I had my wisdom teeth removed around the age of 19, 20, I don't remember exactly, because they were growing in at sort of like 30-degree angles, causing agonizing pain. And so I got to re-experience that pain all over again. My teeth also got really sensitive for a bit. And the only thing that offered some temporary pain relief was the topical application of Japanese peppermint oil. Both my head and my ears felt extremely congested to the point that my hearing diminished to about 50% of its normal capacity. And still, as I'm talking to you now, I feel like I'm underwater. And it's hard for me to even hear myself. So I don't know if I'm screaming. You got to let me know. Now, the swelling is gone down by about 70%. And I don't know if it's noticeable to you guys on camera, but my face is still really swollen. And going into this webinar, I actually wasn't sure if I was going to do it on camera, which I told Arik. I texted him and I said, look, I don't know if I want to do this on camera or if I just want to go and do just the audio, because I felt really self-conscious. My skin had broken out. I mean, there's only so much makeup can do. It can't fix a swollen face. So, and then to get back to all the types of pains that were going on in my head, there was also this near constant headache that alternated from low grade to really intense. Now, another lovely side effect of this metal detox was that I would jump out of bed in the middle of the night in searing pain from the cramping and the spasms in my lower legs. And the only thing I could do for it was to walk around for 5 to 10 minutes, just to help the muscles release that excruciating twisting and pulling sensation and tension. And again, the Japanese peppermint oil combined with ginger and cinnamon oils also help to deal with this quite a bit. Now, Japanese peppermint is really, really excellent for topical pain relief because it has the highest menthol content in all of the mint family. So it cools and numbs while at the same time enhancing circulation. Now, another horrible side effect of this detox has been excessive hair shedding. I've been losing clumps of hair on a daily basis for weeks now. And it has really unnerved me. It's been scary. Now, if you consider that heavy metal detox takes a minimum of 3 months and can take upwards of 6 months, at this rate, I don't know, I might have to shave my head. And then last but not least, I would get the night sweats and extremely itchy rashes all over my body. A very common and well-known side effect of metals recirculating and poisoning the system is gastrointestinal upset. And surely enough, one Sunday morning, I got so sick that I found myself throwing up in the rose bushes in front of a client's apartment building, which was then followed by diarrhea. And this is despite the fact that I had not eaten in more than 10 hours. And so this is what I've been dealing with in the last few weeks leading up to today. I started to feel better a few days ago, but things turned again. So, there's been a bit of a fluctuation with the symptoms. Now, if you look at the symptomatology pertaining to specific metal loads in the body, you will find that mercury toxicity does manifest as preauricular and cervical lymph node problems, meaning swollen lymph nodes in front of the ear, under the jaw, and in the back of the neck. Also, hair loss, tinnitus, and night sweats are additional symptoms of mercury poisoning. Most people think that the main way to acquire mercury toxicity is by having the amalgam dental fillings or vaccines. But the truth is that we are exposed to mercury and many other heavy metals through a number of sources, like food, cosmetics, and the air we breathe. You might be surprised to find that mercury is found in rather alarming quantities in high fructose corn syrup, because it is manufactured with a mercury-containing agent. And high fructose syrup, being a preservative, is used in nearly all processed foods. So consuming products contaminated by heavy metals like mercury leads to fatty liver and contributes to fibrosis and scarring of the liver tissue, which then leads to problems with digestion, gallstones, and even the disruption of the HPA axis. There have been some studies done to determine the amounts and proportions of heavy metals that get stored in various tissues of livestock, specifically the liver, kidneys, and lean muscle. Not surprisingly, mercury, lead, arsenic, and cadmium were found in all of the examined tissues. While lead was spread out fairly equally through all the tissues, the liver accumulated the most arsenic, whereas the kidneys accumulated the most mercury and cadmium. So the lesson here isn't just that our organs accumulate heavy metals, but also that if you consume commercial animal meats, you are automatically exposing yourself to toxic metals. So it's not just fish, in your diet that you have to worry about. Arsenic accumulates in the liver, spleen, kidneys, lungs, and the GI tract. But it also leaves residues in the skin, hair, and nails. Arsenic poisoning can cause nausea, vomiting, and watery diarrhea. Neurological symptoms of arsenic poisoning include seizures, headaches, brain damage, peripheral neuropathy, loss of myelin, low iron levels, and therefore anemia, low blood pressure, and it also manifests as white lines or bands on the fingernails. So it's one of the telltale signs of arsenic poisoning. Now, the main source of arsenic is drinking water, especially if you are drinking water from wells, which is how I grew up. We drank from wells. We drilled down, got the water vein, and that was it. No filtration, nothing, just like that from the ground. Additional arsenic exposure comes from the consumption of rice, fish, and crustaceans, as well as Brussels sprouts that are grown in contaminated soil. Arsenic is highly attracted to the cruciferous vegetables and is absorbed by them in fairly high quantities. Then, if you eat chicken, then you're also consuming arsenic because their feed is laced with arsenic-based drugs. And other sources of arsenic that you might not know about are beer, red wine, and believe it or not, commercially pasteurized apple and pear juices. Obviously, when it comes to mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and aluminum, we know that we should avoid them because of their inherently harmful effects. But some metals like copper, iron, zinc, cobalt, and manganese, the body actually needs in trace amounts for healthy functioning. However, when the consumed levels are higher than trace amounts, these metals can cause serious poisoning as well. As I already said, manganese, which accumulates in the ears and bones, when it reaches toxic levels, it can cause tremors, muscle cramps, and exaggerated reflexes that can lead to Parkinson's. Additionally, manganese toxicity also manifests as insomnia, irritability, aggression, and mental confusion, which can go as far as hallucinations and even psychosis. Then weakness, paralysis, flu-like fever, eye problems, lower back pain, and vomiting and nausea are other common side effects. Having healthy liver function is vital for maintaining optimal manganese levels, because any additional or excess manganese is taken up by the liver and then released into the bile, which is passed into the gut and then excreted with the stool. So while minute amounts of manganese help fight oxidative stress, too much of it has the exact opposite effect, because as it builds up in the mitochondria, it increases the production of reactive oxygen species. Simply put, superoxidants. And on top of that, elevated manganese can increase the virulence of many bacteria, because the invading microorganisms can use manganese to resist the body's immune responses. And if that weren't enough, manganese also depletes glutathione. It is neurotoxic and can cause developmental problems in children, with long-term exposure resulting in brain damage. And it has also been linked to ADHD, Alzheimer's, ALS, cancer, asthma, heart damage, and prion disease. So as I was going through this experience, I was sort of checking off boxes with respect to the types of metals I was mobilizing and excreting based on my symptoms. So mercury, check. Manganese, definitely check. Arsenic, check. And a possible check on lead, which happens to cause hearing loss, headaches, vomiting, and nausea, among other things. Another dangerous metal that I want to spotlight is not as commonly known. It's called thallium. And even though we don't talk about it much, it is arguably the most toxic among the heavy metals, because unlike any other metal, it's able to enter the cell directly by displacing potassium due to their similar molecular structure. And when it gets into the cell, it damages the mitochondria, resulting in cell death. It's also known to cause alopecia. So I'm making possible connections here to hair loss. Thallium can be found in cigarettes and drugs like cocaine and heroin. And it has also been used in rat poison, and back in the day in the treatment of syphilis. What's important to know is that this very destructive poison is present in the contrasting dye that's used for MRIs. You may or may have not have heard many horror stories of people suffering just terrible, irreversible effects as a result of being poisoned by the contrast dye. And you may have heard fairly recently that the actor Chuck Norris was suing the manufacturer for what it did to his wife. According to her, it had severely affected her cognitive function, especially her memory and her ability to speak and articulate. And it also caused her serious muscle wasting. Thallium is normally obtained as a byproduct of sulfuric acid production, as well as the refining of zinc, lead, and copper. This is important because this means that some of these minerals, when taken in a supplement form, can be contaminated with thallium. It used to be that outside of MRI contrast, the most common way that someone might get exposed to it would be in industrial production of electronic devices and glass. But recently, more and more people are getting it into their system because, and listen to this, it has been found in cruciferous vegetables like kelp and spinach. You see, thallium gets into the soil and water supply as a result of fracking. So this contamination becomes more common and pervasive due to these unethical, in my view, industrial practices. It appears that cruciferous vegetables in general show a higher affinity for heavy metal absorption, as is the case with arsenic, which I already mentioned. And I believe that the reason for this is that they are high in sulfur. Now, sulfur is known for its propensity to bind to heavy metals. And it has been used as a chelating agent to decontaminate water ponds and reservoirs. And this is what makes people think that ingesting sulfur is good for detox. Well, not so fast, because we are not ponds or reservoirs where you can manually remove and filter the sulfur out. So it does not work in the same way in the physical body. What we see instead is that sulfur, when ingested, and especially when taken into the body through antibiotics and other sulfur drugs, it adheres to the intestinal wall, and being extremely sticky, it then becomes exceedingly difficult to remove, especially if you then continue to ingest more sulfur on top of it, because by their nature, sulfur molecules bind to other sulfur molecules. So in this way, you're just compounding and increasing the existing sulfur toxicity. And then on top of it, any heavy metals bind to the sulfur that's already stuck to your intestinal wall like cement, ensuring that they aren't going anywhere either. So as you can see, this creates a bit of a problem. Now, I just want to run through the other common metal contaminants and their effects just to give you the full picture. Aluminum likes to embed in bone and muscles, resulting in weakening and deformation of bone structure. Speech problems, anemia, digestive issues, liver and kidney impairment can result from toxic aluminum overload. Other symptoms include seizures and a compromised nervous system, causing difficulty with voluntary and involuntary actions. Also, autism and Alzheimer's have been linked to aluminum toxicity. And finally, we have cadmium. Now, cadmium results from burning fossil fuels like coal and oil, as well as incineration of municipal waste like plastics and batteries. It's also present in notable quantities in cigarettes. Now, in China, which is the largest producer of rice in the world, cadmium from mining operations is released into the rivers, whose water is then used in rice farming. And so if you're eating rice that comes from China, you're ingesting cadmium. Cadmium is a reproductive disruptor that also causes kidney stones. It disables kidney filtration and increases kidney stone formation. Other negative side effects involve the liver, lungs, bones, blood, as well as the immune and the nervous system. And these organs and systems can actually develop into cancerous conditions. There can also be irreversible loss of smell, as well as lung damage and bone fractures. They're accompanied with acute joint and spinal pains. Now, since one of the questions that were submitted earlier and forwarded to me by Arik was in regards to ADHD, I want to emphasize that mercury, arsenic, lead, manganese, and cadmium are all implicated in ADHD. And this includes also autism and other neurologically driven behavioral disorders. Lead poisoning in particular unbalances the GABA, which is the neurotransmitter that helps us control persistent obsessive thoughts that are sort of going round and round in circles. And thus GABA deficiency contributes to anxiety and makes, children really hyperactive. Now, when scientists investigating the heavy metal links to autism went looking for metals in the brain, they didn't see them deposited into tissues, but rather in the substances known as biofilms. Biofilms are basically like cities of pathogenic microorganisms encased in a slimy, mucus-like biological matrix that's made up of sugar polymers, minerals, lipids, and heavy metals. You could say that biofilms are a biological equivalent of skyscrapers, where bacteria, fungi, and viruses live and thrive as communities that communicate with each other, share nutrients and DNA, and undergo changes that enable them to evade the immune system. It's important to reiterate that pathogens use sugars, lipids, and minerals like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, and iron, together with heavy metals, to strengthen and fortify the matrix within which they aggregate. And this is where I want to circle back around to the sodium/cholesterol ring that we see in the irids of people with low systemic cholesterol levels. And sometimes we see the sodium ring or cholesterol ring alone, and sometimes they appear together. The sodium ring is believed to be the first stage of acidosis that later develops into the cholesterol ring. This iridology sign is associated with excess inorganic sodium as well as with cholesterol deposits mixed together with calcium and other unutilized minerals out of solution. So my theory is that the reason for this is that wherever you have heavy metals and lots of stagnant toxic lymph, pathogenic organisms set up camp and they take up residence because they're not that picky and they will aggregate wherever the conditions can support their existence. So let me see if I can show you a picture of the cholesterol and sodium ring. Let me see. So Arik, it says that you disabled screen sharing. Can you enable that?
Yeah, sure. Just a moment. Yes, now you're supposed to be able to do that.
Okay. All right. Can you see?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. So if you see this picture, you see this circle around the iris. But if you look closer, it's actually two different circles. There is one that's lower, and I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing the arrow. It's less opaque and more sort of on the inside border of the iris. Mm-hmm. So this would be the sodium ring. But then on top of it, this is the head area. You have, it's almost like an extra cap over it. And this is the cholesterol ring. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm gonna come out of screen sharing and another thing that I encounter in iridology are the psora, or the so-called chemical or drug deposit spots. And this is where you can see pigments, some of them of metals like iron, that are lodged in tissues. So you're going to see this excess iron sort of stuck all over the place, but at the same time, again, the person is anemic. Now, part of the reason is that these synthetic isolates don't get utilized by the body. The body can't use them. But the other component is that they get co-opted by the pathogens into their biofilm matrix. And so it's my personal belief that the areas in the iris where these metal deposits appear is also where you're going to find biofilms with harmful microorganisms. So I'm going to show you another picture. Okay, so you see these dark spots sort of floating over the surface of the iris. These are drug deposits, these are chemicals. And the ones that are sort of like these dark rusty brown, they're indicative of iron being lodged into different tissues. And my personal theory, I'm not saying that this has been proven, it's just from my personal observation, when I see people and the types of problems they're having in their body, and combined with the information that I have about biofilms, you know, these metals and minerals don't just sit around doing nothing. The pathogens are making use of them, and they're using them to build these cities and skyscrapers that are sort of holding them encased, snug as a bug. Now, when we talk about parasites, most people think about worms, right? But worms are actually the least of our problems, and they're fairly easy to eliminate. The real parasitic menace comes in the form of the pathogens that create biofilms all over our body, because these biological structures protect them. And neither antibiotics nor herbal antiparasitics can get at these bastards because they're protected by this biofilm. And not only are they robbing us of minerals, but they're also using the poisonous heavy metals to hide behind. Now, normally, the most obvious and common places where the biofilms are found are in the mouth, nose, and the GI tract. But in a weakened system of susceptible persons, they can be literally anywhere. And having an implant of any kind, be it a tooth, knee, hip, or breast implant, increases your susceptibility to biofilms tenfold. Even things like the feeding tubes and catheters and even braces provide the perfect surfaces for the bacteria to attach and form biofilms. Lyme, lupus, strep throat, acne, rosacea, dandruff, the so-called chicken skin, dental plaque and the coating on the tongue, cellulitis, thrush, IBS, and sinusitis are all examples of biofilms. Any recurrent lung, bladder, ear, yeast, or viral infections like herpes are also due to biofilms. The majority of time, the microorganisms that are encased in biofilms act at a diminished capacity, almost as if they're in hibernation. This is when they have reduced metabolism, which keeps their need for oxygen as well as their nutritional needs very low. And especially for those biofilms that are enclosed in cysts. And conveniently, this also helps them to avoid detection by the immune system or being snuffed out by antibiotics. And during those times of low activity, the infections are asymptomatic. But when the body becomes more acidic, allowing these bugs to proliferate at an accelerated rate, or when we go into detox and start busting the biofilms, all of a sudden we get a cold or flu, or our cold sores reappear. So when strep throat, pneumonia, or a UTI are treated medically and the symptoms go away, we didn't actually eradicate the infection. All we did was force the microbes deeper into the biofilm to hide and hibernate in order to avoid antibiotics and herbs. Unfortunately, biofilms are difficult to detect and diagnose using the currently available tests, because since the bacteria are tucked away in this polysaccharide matrix, stool samples and swabs for cultures will come back negative unless there is an active infection with pus. Having adapted to lower nutrient requirements, the bacteria and biofilms don't give off the reading of live active bacteria, which helps them stay under the radar. And when it comes to testing for biofilms in the GI tract, the main challenge is that it's a large area. You know, our intestines are about 25 feet long. And so first you would have to know exactly where in the intestines to look, because biofilms can be present in select localized pockets rather than all throughout. And then the second problem is that this type of procedure, by definition, would be quite invasive. You'd have to have an endoscope, go all the way in, find it, extract it, so quite involved. Dr. Peter Cohen, who is a pioneer in treating autism through biomedical and nutritional approach, found evidence of biofilms in autistic persons. She discovered that going after the biofilms and disrupting their matrix causes a huge offload of heavy metals in the urine and stool. This means that the metal deposits not just in the brain, but also in the biofilms that are located in the GI tract, equally contribute to autism. And this, of course, only confirms what iridologists have known for a couple of hundred years, which is that the gut and the brain are intimately connected, and that the pollution of the gut will automatically affect the toxicity and therefore function of the brain. And there's additional corroborating data from the allergy research group showing that chelation of heavy metals has a positive impact on autistic patients, resulting in improvement of their symptoms. Now, Dr. Cohen believes that autistic patients have elevated mercury and lead levels. And since bacteria are not picky about the minerals they use to construct their biofilms, they effectively lock these minerals into the body by incorporating them into their matrix. And then on top of that, they add the body's own fibrin to it to give it a stronger structure. Now, in cases where fibrin is involved, we tend to see polyps and tumors. It's important to understand that pathogens not only feed on heavy metals, but they also use them to kill antibiotics. Unless you understand this mechanism, you're not going to be able to detox heavy metals because you cannot get the metals out without disrupting the biofilm matrix. So let's look at the toxic relationship between the heavy metals and the bacteria and biofilms. In a healthy body, under normal conditions, most pathogens that we come in contact with on a daily basis don't make it past our primary immune defenses. But when the system is overloaded with toxins due to poor elimination, our resistance to harmful invaders is significantly reduced. Heavy metals are especially hindering to the immune system because they drive antibiotic resistance. And one way they do this is by causing mitochondrial dysfunction, thus robbing the cells of the energy needed to fight off pathogens, which of course promotes opportunistic infections. What's interesting is that on the flip side, the presence of antibiotics greatly reduces the removal of heavy metals from the body. Heavy metals also support the proliferation and replication of viral DNA. And they also suppress immune cell activity. For instance, heavy metals inhibit macrophages, which are our cannibal cells that are found in the lymph nodes that eat up viruses, bacteria, fungi, and other parasites. Metals also block the activity of our natural killer cells, whose job it is to target and destroy viruses. According to the founder of the Klinghardt Institute, Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, molds and yeasts are especially problematic because they use heavy metals to protect themselves from the white blood cells called neutrophils, which are the body's first line of defense against pathogens. In a healthy body, these white blood cells attack microbial invaders by engulfing them and dousing them with antimicrobial substances. And they do this by forming a type of an envelope or a trap that allows them to isolate the pathogen, thus minimizing any potential damage to the host cell. However, it's been observed that neutrophils are killed by mercury, while molds are not. Mold infestation also makes us more sensitive to EMFs, or electromagnetic frequencies. In one research experiment, mold cultures were separated and observed, where one specimen was exposed to electromagnetic frequency while the other was not. It was found that the exposed specimen produced 600 times more harmful biotoxins and was able to multiply dozens of times faster than the unexposed specimen. Some scientists theorize that it's possible that EMFs in of themselves are not necessarily harmful to the cells, but they may impact the microbes within us in a way that results in greater levels of bio and mycotoxins. It has long been established that electromagnetic fields, even of minimal intensity, alter and modify the human microbiome. This, of course, is a big deal considering that our microbiome is involved in the development and function of all our organs and system, most important of which is the immune system. I don't know if you know this, but for every human cell that makes up our body, there are at least 10 cells of various microorganisms that are hitching a ride. This means that in its totality, our body is actually more bacteria than human. Such alteration of the microbiota is one of the mechanisms through which EMFs affect the function of our bodies. EMFs suppress immunity, and they also have been shown to promote growth and pathogenicity of Borrelia and Epstein-Barr virus. And for those of you who are not familiar, Borrelia is a Lyme-borne co-infection. Additionally, low-intensity microwave radiation was shown to induce oxidative stress, as well as inflammatory response and DNA damage in rat brains. There are at least 23 separate studies which show that electromagnetic radiation affects the voltage-gated calcium channels, causing the release of peroxynitrite. Now, peroxynitrite is the so-called superoxidant which induces cell death, and it has been implicated as a causative factor in ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, strokes, chronic heart failure, as well as the colorectal and breast cancers. And peroxynitrite triggers cell death by, once again, damaging the mitochondria. Then you have the Wi-Fi, which at this point is everywhere. You can't avoid it. And Wi-Fi has been shown to dramatically reduce glutathione levels. And since glutathione is one of the most important intracellular detox agents, it means that Wi-Fi exposure, by extension, decreases our ability to detox. There's also documented evidence of increased incidence of cancers in individuals who live near cell phone towers. In chronic diseases that are characterized by high levels of endotoxins, like Lyme disease or mold exposure or Epstein-Barr virus, Wi-Fi and cell phone use has been shown to massively exacerbate the virulence of these pathogens by opening up the brain-blood barrier. Additionally, the effects of mobile phone exposure on the cerebellum, hippocampus, and the frontal lobe have been studied, and the results showed that radiation alters the expression of as many as 143 proteins in all of these brain areas. And these changes are related to brain plasticity, oxidative stress, nervous system function, and apoptosis, which is also known as cell death. And these effects can manifest as headaches, sleep disturbances, fatigue, memory loss, and even tumor growth. There's also data suggesting that cell phone radiation is especially damaging to the developing brains of children. Exposure to cell phones in the womb and to a lesser extent postnatally has been linked to behavioral and emotional problems along with hyperactivity. It's important to know that this is much less of an issue for adults with fully developed nervous system, but in infants, cell phone radiation has been shown to delay and disrupt brain recalibration. And the more radiation the mother is exposed to during pregnancy, the more neurologically impaired the child is going to be. And this neurological development can be further compromised if the child continues to be exposed to the microwaves and EMFs in the home. In order to minimize this exposure, it's recommended that you switch off all fuses at night. Also understand that your Wi-Fi router is basically a cell phone tower, as is the cordless phone. So you must remove all electronics from the bedroom. You can also use radio protective clothing or Faraday cage type bed canopies that you can put over your bed to deflect radiation. And it's also important to detoxify heavy metals. EMFs reduce our ability to detox heavy metals. So it's not surprising that studies show that eliminating electromagnetic radiation dramatically increases elimination of heavy metals. Now, for those of you who have the amalgam fillings, it's been found that around-the-clock exposure to the microwave and cell phone radiation and Wi-Fi emissions drives the release of toxic mercury particles from the fillings, 80% of which migrate into the central nervous system with a half-life of 32 years. Now, I want you to really think about what that means. Half-life is the length of time it takes a pollutant or a contaminant to lose half of their toxicity. And for the heavy metals leaking from the dental fillings, this amounts to 32 years. Can you imagine? This is why detoxification can be such an arduous and uphill road for so many people. Now, on the subject of teeth, I've already discussed at length why we lose enamel on detox in a different webinar, having made the connection between heavy metals and tooth loss. But I want to expand on this to give you a more complete picture, because now I have an even deeper understanding of the problem. The dental plaque on our teeth that feels sort of grainy against the tongue when we wake up in the morning, as well as the coating on our tongue, are biofilms, which are large colonies of harmful bacteria that are multiplying and building massive microbe cities out of sugar polymers, fats, metals, and minerals. When we start detoxing, we mobilize toxins that had been to a great degree inert due to lymphatic stagnation, which had kept everything sort of agglomerated and stuck together. But when things start to break loose, including the heavy metals that are embedded in our tooth structure, and our elimination is inefficient, or worse, non-existent because our kidneys are not filtering, then the pathogens seize those metals, which allows them to grow exponentially. And during this time, many people notice that their teeth can turn dark or yellow, or that they start seeing tartar buildup that is sometimes brown in color. Now, this is all a result of microbial proliferation and biofilm growth. When we detox heavy metals that have been embedded into the fabric of our teeth, we inevitably lose some of that structure. But the problem is worsened because, in addition to appropriating heavy metals, the pathogenic cultures that invade our oral cavity also steal our minerals, which is another reason we lose enamel. And if you are supplementing with calcium to help counteract this enamel loss without addressing the biofilm problem, you're actually making things worse by giving the bacteria more building materials that allows them to grow their numbers, thus increasing their destructive effects on your teeth. The oil pulling protocol, with the intermittent application of the mixture of specific oils that I had outlined in the webinar on teeth, this protocol works so well precisely because these oils, especially the coconut and the cinnamon oils, are highly disruptive to biofilms, and they prevent their proliferation. Lauric and caprylic acids in coconut oil strip bacteria of their protective coating, allowing our immune cells to destroy them. And cinnamon oil in studies has been shown to stop the growth of biofilms. So for those of you who have mineral deficiencies that you can't seem to correct, I say look into whether or not you have a biofilm problem, because bacteria sequester and co-opt the minerals from their host. And that's why in the natural model of healing, we do not support supplementation with isolates. Instead, we try to figure out why a person is deficient, because 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with the diet of raw fruits and vegetables being somehow deficient or inadequate. So before you rush to supplement with synthetic minerals or things like shilajit, stop and ask yourself if this is going to help or if it's actually going to hurt by accelerating the proliferation of biofilms, thus making your problem worse. And I'm going to get into the problems with shilajit and folic acid a bit later. But for now, it's important to understand that biofilms thrive in moist environments, which is why elimination of water during a dry fast is such an effective way to reduce their numbers. However, there are a couple of caveats that need to be discussed. If you're looking to eliminate biofilms through dry fasting, it can only be done effectively with a hard dry fast. Why? Because we have biofilms everywhere, including our skin. And as long as these biofilms have any contact with water, they're going to stay alive. And this is especially the case if during a soft dry fast, you're rinsing your mouth with water. So that's issue number one. Another thing I can tell you from my personal experience of extended dry fasting is that it takes a rather long time to fully eliminate biofilms. Up to this point, the longest I have fasted has been 13 days. And what I have noticed is that by day 8, my tongue starts to slowly and incrementally clear up. It begins turning pink and clear on the sides first, and then it extends to the tip, and then the clearing continues to expand by moving inward, if you will. So between days 8 and 13, which is about 4 to 5 days, give or take, depending on how early into day 8 I might start seeing these changes, I had only achieved about 40% of total tongue clearing. So for me, 13-day was not long enough to get my tongue completely clear. Considering this rate of progress, it means that in order to fully eliminate these biofilms from my mouth, I would have to keep fasting for at least 18 to 20 days. And that is not an easy feat. And I don't know that many people who can do it. Now, I don't know if Trevor ever got his tongue fully cleared in 20 days, but that is something that I would like to ask him. So that's issue number 2. Now, another thing working against you is that while you may very well considerably chip away at the biofilms through dry fasting, if they're not completely eliminated, given the right conditions, they can regenerate, rebound, and grow back super fast. This means that you would have to do multiple long stints of dry fasting while also actively going after the biofilms in between the fasts. Another thing I want to mention here, just to drive home the point about supplementation and how it's not necessarily it's not what helps you rebuild your teeth, is that during a dry fast, and I only do hard dry fasting where I have zero contact with water. I leave my mouth completely alone. I don't touch water, nothing. At the end of a long dry fast, I regrow enamel. When I finally brush my teeth after I break my fast, my teeth look snow white. They look thicker and they look stronger. So I'm not regenerating my teeth because I'm taking in calcium or some other mineral. In fact, I'm consuming nothing at all, zero nutrition of any kind. And yet I'm rebuilding my teeth. How can this be? The only reason that this is possible is that dry fasting disrupts the biofilms. It stops bacteria cold in its tracks, it kills them, it deactivates them, and during the time, then the body is able to rebuild, and you do not need any additional minerals. And what this tells me is that this loss of enamel is first and foremost driven by the biofilms. Now, how do we tackle heavy metals? In order to be able to remove and detox heavy metals out of your system, you have to go after the biofilms that are keeping these metals locked in. And this is done with systemic enzymes and herbs like Boswellia, Cistus incanus, and Japanese knotweed. Now, I really, 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 really love Cistus incanus. This is an herb that grows in Europe. So if you're in the United States, you have to have it shipped from Europe. It is arguably one of the strongest natural biofilm busters. And it also is extremely effective at killing the coronavirus. And this is something that is very useful information that you might not know. It also eradicates Lyme. So you can just sip and drink your cistus tea, and it's going to help with the dental plaque, with the biofilms in your mouth. It's going to bust biofilms systemically, and it also kills viruses and Lyme co-infections. Japanese knotweed is another excellent herb because it is really effective against the bacteria and the biofilms that create dental plaque and acne. Now, once you go after the biofilms, then the next thing you must do is go after the pathogens and the metals with antiparasitics and chelating herbs and compounds. Things like EDTA not only bind to heavy metals, but they also bind to other minerals in the body. So if you're using EDTA for chelation, you have to be aware that you can have a depletion of minerals, in which case I do recommend adding a bone and connective tissue formula like that of Dr. Morse's by Cellular Botanicals. And EDTA is best delivered through the skin, even though there are supplements that you can ingest, like capsules. But digestion is not an efficient way to absorb EDTA. So you can get a cream like this. It's called Detoxifying. Can you see it?
Yes, Ivana, we can see it.
Perfect. And you apply it to the skin, and this is the cream that I had put on my neck and face and rubbed into my lymph nodes. And I definitely had a reaction. Now, as far as replenishing minerals, I want to caution people against things like shilajit and folic acid. Couple of reasons. When it comes to shilajit, it only comes from two places, Russia or China. The problem with this is that there is zero quality control. You have no idea what you're taking. You don't know where it's actually coming from. Another problem with taking just raw shilajit is that it's not standardized, which means that the amount of minerals that you take will vary, not just from batch to batch, but from dose to dose. And you have no idea how much of what minerals you're taking per serving. This means that you can actually overdose on metals such as zinc, copper, iron, and cobalt, and manganese, which can be extremely dangerous. Now, when it comes to fulvic acid, 80% of the stuff that is sold on the market is contaminated with heavy metals. 80% of the stuff that is sold on Amazon or wherever have you actually comes from coal mines. Again, you have no idea what you are taking. So you can actually be creating a heavy metal toxicity by taking these things. Not only that, but I've said it before, fulvic acids are plant food. Fulvic acid is a fertilizer. It is not for human consumption. So these are things that I do not support. Now, I actually bought shilajit. I was like, maybe I should do this, but I can't take it. My body has this reaction that is negative. It repels me. So it just sits on my counter and I still have not taken it. Like, I have a negative physical, emotional, energetic response to it. My body doesn't want it. So that's all I can tell you about that. Now, I want to tell you a few things about the kinds of problems that can arise from overdosing on things that we are told are really good for us, like zinc, iron, copper, cobalt, and so forth. So let's start with zinc. Zinc, outside of acute poisoning symptoms, such as nausea, stomach, and intestinal disturbances, also causes anemia. It actually suppresses the absorption of iron and copper. Excess zinc also causes abnormally low levels of HDL, which is known to be the good cholesterol, while keeping LDL, or the bad cholesterol, levels high. It also is implicated in general liver dysfunction. People who get zinc poisoning may also lose the ability to taste or may experience distortions in taste. And lastly, elevated zinc levels lower white blood cell count, thus leading to frequent infections. Now, excess copper causes blood disturbances, but most disturbingly, it causes psychological and neurological effects like the racing mind, panic attacks, depression, hair loss and hair graying, adrenal depletion, hypothyroidism, and problems with concentration and memory. And lastly, cobalt toxicity causes lack of appetite or anorexia, tinnitus, nerve damage, respiratory illnesses, also affects the thyroid and can cause goiter. And it also can cause damage to the heart and the kidneys. So again, I want to stress, more is not better when it comes to minerals. You have to be careful here. Now, and the final step is reducing EMFs. There are some minerals and substances that can help with this. One is shungite. And shungite is a mineral that, once again, is only found in Russia. And it's believed to be at least 2 billion years old. And it is thought to have been created as a result of some sort of impact with a meteorite, right? So shungite has actually been shown to have protective properties against radiation. And there was a study done where mice were exposed to radiation, and then their skin was rubbed with shungite, and this actually drained the radiation and helped them recover. There's also something called orgonite, which is a resin type product. And usually it comes made with some copper coil inside and is said to absorb or neutralize EMFs. I don't know if this is true. I cannot find any definitive studies about it. I have had one of these things taped to my fuse box for years, but I can't tell you if it does anything at all. Now, there are also some things that you can ingest that offer protection from radiation. One of them is the propolis extract, namely caffeic acid. And there's also the rosemary extract. Both of these things show a notable protection against cell phone radiation. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to show you another picture. And, you know, your warning, this is going to be a picture of my urine. I have seen metal flakes in my urine. And when I held the jar up to the light, they were glittering like these metallic pieces. So I took a picture of it, and it doesn't quite translate. It's not as vivid in picture, but you can still see it. So I want to show this to you because this is really cool to actually see the metals being excreted in your urine. Can you see it?
Yes, definitely.
So you see these sort of flakes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hold it up to the light, they really glitter like pieces of foil. So it's really cool to be able to see this. And so I just wanted to share that with you so that maybe, you know what to look for.
Amazing.
All right, so I'm going to open this up to discussion, and you can ask your questions.
Okay, guys. So, who wants to ask the question? So Ivana,
Hello.
what?
Hi.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you look great.
Thank you.
There's nothing wrong with your face. I mean, you said that well, you can't see anything wrong.
Thank God.
Yeah, I wrote it on the chat. I'll just read it. Regarding, this time it's specific. I mean, I know I asked general questions. Regarding kidney filtration, I did the dark grapes, lemon, ginger protocol for 1 week, and I've been on solid food vacation for a month now. But I think my kidneys are not filtering it because I don't see sediment in my creatinine level is 0.64. So what would you suggest? I mean,
Sometimes it just takes longer. So when you say for a week, I didn't say that you are to be on this juice for a week to get filtration. No, there is the protocol that's involved with castor oil packs for the kidneys that are to be done at least for a week to get kidney filtration. But I know people that took more than a year to get their kidneys to filter. It depends on how badly compromised your kidneys are, kind of genetic weaknesses. Now, it's very difficult to get your kidneys to filter unless you have cleaned up your GI tract reasonably well enough. And at least the left kidney is easier to get to work because our left kidney is plugged into the sigmoid colon, which is the lowest and final last part of the colon, right? So we have easier access to it with enemas and stuff like that. Because that toxicity that destroys kidney actually comes from that leakage that happens through the intestine via the lymphatic and nerve channels. And this is why you would see those lacuna or lesions in the iris. So the first 3 months going raw, I didn't filter at all. That's when I started dry fasting. And it wasn't right away after dry fasting. That took also a couple of months. And I was doing consistently 24 hours a day, 24 hours a week, excuse me, till I started to finally see a little bit. And you will need kidney herbs. Sometimes food is not, if you have genetically weak glands and tissues, diet is not going to be enough, or it will take a very long time. It's going to be a slow road. And sometimes, depending on how badly compromised your kidneys are, you may even benefit from taking a kidney glandular, which is an animal product. All right. Now, if you're going to go that route, only source your glandulars from New Zealand cattle, not from Argentina, not from anywhere else. New Zealand only. Their pastures are never treated with pesticides. They have the highest welfare laws and protections for the animals, because you need a healthy gland or an organ, which means that animal was not living in stressful conditions where it was abused. It was not subjected to chemicals or pesticides and so on, okay? But sometimes, depending on how bad your kidneys are, you may need a glandular. But you always have to go after your GI tract. You have to be on the kidney herbs. And if your kidneys are really bad, I would get a kidney tea, and I would mix it with the Hilal tea and brew it in a big sort of pot in one batch, cool it, strain it, and then instead of drinking it 1 cup at a time, sip it. Keep that, keep a few jars in the refrigerator so you don't have to brew it every day. And when you sip it consistently, you're consistently delivering that medicine to the organ. So little by little, you're chipping away at that congestion, right? And also when you're drinking a big cup at a time, there's greater burden on the kidney to now have to process that much liquid at once, right? So when you're doing it in smaller sips that are more spread out, you get more consistent delivery of that medicinal effect, while at the same time, keeping that burden fairly low or minimal, where it's easy for the kidneys to deal with that. And then dry fasting. Go for 24 hours a day. I mean, once a week, choose a day and do 24 hours without water. Because when you are going into dry fasting, the kidneys actually get rest because liver, becomes the organ that does most of the work. And that's what helps the kidneys to unload some of that stuff that's been stuck, that's been clogging them. And that's what you have to, sometimes it takes time. I really do know people who took over a year to get there. And the only thing you can do is keep going, until you get there. That's it. I have no other solution for you. And, we talked about tapping. Like, these spots are actually physical meridians. And by tapping on them, you can actually stimulate the organs. So here on the collarbone is your kidney meridian. And you can just tap there intermittently a few times a day, and that's going to sort of give a jolt of electricity to your kidneys. And you can find other meridians at the bottom of your foot or, on your hands that you can stimulate to sort of try to wake them up. So these are some of the things that you can do.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to ask about what I posted on the WhatsApp group.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, about what should a raw vegan diet look like? I mean, what about everything that they say about supplements like vitamin D, vitamin B12, and all these minerals? I mean, I know you keep answering it, and we keep asking the same questions, but it takes to change your mindset.
So I don't know if maybe I'm not explaining it clearly enough, because it's the same question. It's like the Groundhog Day, and I don't have a different answer for you. It's always going to be the same answer. Now, as far as vitamin D goes, I would only recommend it to people who live in northern climates where they don't get enough sun exposure. If you live in an area where sun is abundant all year round, obviously you don't need it. There's no need to take a pill for it. But there are places on this planet where, there's no sunlight for half the year. Obviously, someone in an area like that, or if you live in Canada, or, I live in New York, which is not that far from Canada, you live in Scandinavia, then yes, I would recommend a vitamin D supplement. But if you have conditions to be outside where the sun is nice and you can be outside for at least 15-20 minutes a day, then you don't need it. Now, vitamin B12, another thing, it's not, a one-size-fits-all recommendation. If you are growing your own food, because the only way to get vitamin B12 is by eating unwashed produce, because you want to get that vitamin B12 that's on the produce, because B12 is made by soil-based bacteria. So if you are in a position where you're growing your own food that's grown in clean, uncontaminated soil, without pesticides, in a fairly clean ecosystem where there's not much air pollution, then you don't need to supplement it. Just eat unwashed produce or lightly rinsed produce, and you will get vitamin B12. But if you can only get your produce from a city supermarket, then I would not advise eating it unwashed, right? Also, you have no idea. It may say that it's organic, but you really have no idea where it was grown, how it was grown. So better safe than sorry. But washing and scrubbing your produce, of course, eliminates all traces of vitamin B12. So it depends. Some people will need it and others will not. Does that answer your question, or is there something else to it?
I don't think, but I also asked about the bones, strengthening the bones, and you're probably going to say that is about
I just talked
detox.
I just talked about it. Did I not just spend, was it an hour? I don't know how far.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with what you're consuming. I just told you, I would go on 13 days without food and water and rebuild my teeth. What does that tell you? It has nothing to do with supplementation. If you have, again, I talked about heavy metal toxicity. Things like aluminum will actually make you lose bone mass. You understand? So you have to, the question you have to find the answer to, why are you deficient? Why do you have a bone weakness? Is this a metal toxicity? Is this a glandular problem where you don't make the hormones that are necessary for calcium utilization? What is it? Because like I said, ingesting all this extra calcium and these minerals can bite you in the ass, because they can drive the proliferation of biofilms that are highly destructive to the body, or they start being deposited in your vascular walls. There's been studies after study after study, and we're talking Harvard studies. We're not talking some rinky-dink anecdotes. We're talking multiple Harvard studies that show time after time after time, ingesting dairy causes osteoporosis. Supplementing with calcium causes osteoporosis. Women, thousands of women have been studied, and what they all come out with is that putting calcium in makes their bone loss worse. And I heard this in a presentation done by a conventional medical doctor. This wasn't a raw vegan guy. This wasn't even a vegetarian guy. This is a regular guy who treats diabetes. And he put up a presentation and he put up on the board all of these Harvard studies. And he goes, why doctors are participating in this insanity when they know that this does absolutely nothing to improve bone health. In fact, it makes things worse. Why do they keep doing this? And the answer is simple, because they do not have a better answer. So they have to do something. If you go to a doctor, you can't walk out of there with them and go, well, we don't know how to help you. You're on your own. So they'll give you the things that they've been doing for the last 50, 60 years, even though it doesn't work. And a great analogy that he used was, imagine that, you know, your skeletal system is a house, right? And it has a certain shape and size, like a house. So to build a house, let's say you need 100 bricks. But our thinking is we want to put more in. So it's like you saying, even though I only need 100 bricks to build my house, I'm gonna use 135 bricks because this is gonna make my house stronger. But does it? Now what you have is a house with a bunch of bricks all over the place that are neither use nor ornament. You have bricks in your kitchen, on the floor in your living room that are doing nothing. Are they making your house strong? No, they're just creating obstructions in your body. And it's the same thing when it comes to our house. There's no deficiencies from eating fruits and vegetables, none. because our nutritional needs are actually very, very minor. As we can see through, with all of these people that are fasting extremely long periods of time, instead of getting worse, they're getting better. How do you explain that? So get out of this mindset and this thinking.
That's the problem. Not that you're not explaining it well, is that we were conditioned for so long, so it takes time to
It's not about time, it's about experience. And for me, it was experiencing the regeneration to my teeth after a 13-day dry fast, where you have to go, well, gee, I have not consumed a single mineral, and yet I am growing my enamel back. How can this possibly be?
Yeah,
right? So that's what actually gives you the knowing. Not I think, I hope. No, I know. Because this is the experience. It's clear as day. I see this. It's irrefutable. The evidence is right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So get out of this fear.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ivana, we have few questions in the chat.
Yes.
Would you like me to read them, or would you like to read them yourself?
Sure. No, you go ahead. That makes it easier.
Okay, so great. So Sema from Belgium is asking, so what does she want us to do? Thank you. Hello from Belgium. So probably she means, what would be the exact protocol of a heavy metal detox, like by steps?
Well, I gave you the steps. First, you go after the biofilms. You're taking the herbs that I mentioned, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You can also take systemic enzymes, which is different from digestive enzymes. All right. So first you have to disrupt that. Once you get that going, then you get on the herbs that are chelating, which means they trap heavy metals and then they remove them. And at the same time, you're killing the parasites, those microbes with herbs. Okay?
Okay.
You're also eliminating as much as possible your exposure to electromagnetic frequency. And you do this with the help, like I said, certain minerals. You can buy shungite, like raw blocks. You can buy towers and you can put them all over your house. You can get shungite jewelry, like this little bracelet I have that you put on your hand, so that, because we're constantly attached to our phones. There are necklaces, there are these things that you can do to reduce your exposure, right? And that's how it is. But do not go on a heavy metal detox unless your kidneys are filtering. Or you are going to be in a world of hurt. My kidneys are filtering. And I told you what was happening with me. All right. Imagine when your kidneys are not filtering, because you see these chelating agents, their ions bind to the ions of metals. But these bonds are not ironclad and they sometimes break loose. So now you have these loose minerals circulating in your system, making you sick. And these minerals sometimes, especially when they don't come out, they can actually be shifted to a different part of your body. So it's extremely important that your kidneys are filtering. Do not go on a heavy metal detox unless you have filtration.
Okay. Ivana,
I have a full protocol that is for sale. I mean, I can't give you everything for free. Where I give you everything step by step, all the herbs. I even give you Dr. Morse's exact formulas that you can make your own herbs if you don't have access to his formulas. Right? So if you want that, you can contact me. but I gotta, eat, and I have to keep a roof over my head. So I can't give you everything.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But these are the steps. Now you can research, you can go and research the enzymes, you can go research all kinds of things to get it done. But I break it down. I give you all the components, from systemic support to steps. Literally, I give you a day, from this hour to this hour to this hour to this hour, how you do it step by step, what you take and how you take it.
Great, great. Ivana, and what about the usage of cilantro and chlorella? Because many people think
Yes.
that those substances are very good for heavy metal detox.
Yes, well, I was taking both. I was taking the chlorella and cilantro tincture, while at the same time applying transdermal EDTA. And maybe that's why my, reaction was amplified, because I really, I don't know how to do things in moderation. That is, I like to push the envelope. I like to go fast, and sometimes it hurts, and it did hurt. So now another important part of this is binders. Gotta take something like the GI Broom formula, something that has bentonite clay, something that has activated charcoal, some kind of a binder. All right.
Okay, good. And also, my wife wanted to ask you about whether this protocol would be suitable for pregnant women and for
No.
lactating, like for breastfeeding women, lactating women. No?
No, absolutely not. Do not do a parasite or a metal detox while you're pregnant. Big no-no.
Also during breastfeeding, also not recommended. Yeah.
Nope. You're mobilizing metals, and like I said, some of these metals are going to come loose. Now, we all have metals, and you can pass them down through the lymphatic system to your child during pregnancy or while you're breastfeeding. But if you're doing metal detox, now these metals are floating in your system.
Yeah,
now they're loose versus they've been sort of agglomerated and trapped in biofilms. You understand? They're sort of constrained. So you would only increase the transmission of those metals to your child, which would have catastrophic effects on their developing brain. Absolutely not do it.
Okay, great. Now we have another question from Raju. He's asking, what are your thoughts on colloidal silver? Any health benefits?
Colloidal silver is very effective at killing things. The problem is it kills everything, including good bacteria. It wipes your microbiota completely. And it also has toxicity associated with it. So would not recommend colloidal silver for that reason. Certain metals, and there was a point where I played with this. I played with gold, silver, platinum, stay away. You should not be taking metals into your body. There's toxicity associated with them. The only ones that we need in minute traces are iron, zinc, copper, and cobalt. That's it. And only in trace amounts. Everything else has no business being in your body.
Great. Then, Ivana, there is another question from Pete. And he says, hi, Ivana, you recently mentioned a juice drink which contains 10 lemons, hand-sized ginger root, dark grapes, and honey, more for taste, diluted in 2 liters of water. Over what duration of time should you drink it, and what quantity of grapes, please?
All right, let me see if I can explain it differently, because again, this thing has been, beaten to death over a number of webinars. Let's say per liter of grape juice 3 to 4 lemons, and then add another big chunk of ginger juice. You want to have it 3 times a day, want to have it 4 times a day, I don't care. But let's say per liter of grape juice, 3 to 4 lemons, whatever you can handle, and a nice chunk of ginger, maybe like this big. All right. Now, the only reason dilution was even mentioned is that the way I explained it first was that you juice everything, you know, a large quantity, then you split it in 3 portions, and then you might drink the lemon juice separately. Make it much easier for yourself. 3 to 4 lemons mixed with a liter of grape juice plus ginger. And then do it as many times as you want or can drink it.
Okay.
And I would not necessarily recommend honey, because it does feed yeast and fungus. Honey is a complex sugar, okay? It's not like fruit sugar. So honey for me is more like a treat. It's not a detox food.
Great. Okay, then Desiree is asking something that you have already answered in the past. What is your opinion on urine therapy? So would you like to address it, or we just sent her to watch your last webinar?
Myself, this is not for me. This is completely counterintuitive to me on every single level. Urine is a waste product. Just think about it. I just showed you urine that has metal floating in it. Think about this logically. How would it benefit me to drink that urine with metal in it? It doesn't. I just worked so hard and suffered so hard to try to get that garbage out of me. And what you're thinking is that drinking it in and putting that in somehow makes you healthy. It doesn't. That's the only answer I got. I am not into it. It's illogical to me. It's, like I said, there are certain things that I respond to on an intuitive level, and I get a lot of downloads from my higher self, and a lot of those downloads you have seen bear out in these webinars. Like I got information about the teeth. That came from my higher self, and then I went and I started to research it, and lo and behold, I found all this information. But up until then, until I got a download, I didn't know where to look. So I have to rely on my inner source of guidance, which I then check and verify by looking at research, by looking at studies, by looking what other people have done and their experience. And I have not seen the benefit of urine drinking.
Yeah, I just want to say to everyone who is interested that I'm in touch with a girl now who is a long-time practitioner of urine therapy, and we are organizing a webinar with her. She's living kind of a fasting lifestyle, but she also includes urine therapy. So it will just give us another perspective. She has been practicing it for a long time, and apparently she gets lots of benefits from that. So she will just tell us from her point of view about that. So that would be the best answer to everyone who is interested.
Look, you want to do it? I have no objections to it. I can only tell you about my personal feelings. This is nothing that ever interested me. This is nothing I ever plan on trying. So I am not the best person to ask, because this is my personal stance on it.
Yeah.
So you talk to people who actually live it.
Yeah, so we'll have a special webinar probably in the near future about that. Okay, now Sarah is asking, what was the herb mentioned that we can't get in the US?
I mean, you can get it. It's mostly sold on eBay, but even on Amazon, you can find it. It's called Cistus incanis. Let me see if I can type this into the chat. It keeps changing my spelling. Yeah, so you should be able to see it. That's C-I-S-T-U-S-I-N-C-A-K, I'm sorry, I-N-C-A-N-U-S, cystus incanus.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So guys, just check it out. Okay, and then Sema is asking, kidneys are filtering or not? What does that mean concretely? How to know? I didn't have a medical education, so your language is above my level. So is there a way to explain all your information in more simple language?
Which information? You have to be specific. I can't go back and go over
she's asking about kidney filtration, but we had
kidney filtration is very easy and simple to check. You pee in a clear jar. You let it sit for a bit. For me, when I'm filtering, it doesn't need to really sit. Like you see the urine is so cloudy that you can't see through it. That already tells you. But if it sits for like 15 minutes, then the sediment settles on the bottom. And if you go and see my dry fasting videos, I show you. I hold up a jar and show you this is what it looks like. So unless you have sediment in your urine, you don't have kidney filtration. Now, another way, a harder way to check is to look at your blood work. Look at the creatinine levels. If your creatinine levels are over 0.5, you are not filtering. But the most easy and accessible way to do it is pee in a clear jar. That's it. And look at your urine. If your urine is clear, you have no filtration. If you get consistently sediment in your urine, your kidneys, at least one of them is filtering. And remember that your right kidney only filters the right side of your body, and your left kidney only filters the left side of your body. And from the urine, unfortunately, you cannot tell, if you're getting filtration from both kidneys or just the one, and if it's just the one, then which. That you can help determining by looking at a person's eyes and seeing which kidney is weaker, or by taking your blood pressure. Your bottom blood pressure, your diastolic blood pressure, is indicative of the kidney function. That blood pressure ideally should be at 60. So it's 120 over 60. If that blood pressure is significantly higher than 60, then you know that that kidney is in trouble. And of course, you take the blood pressure on both sides, because left arm taking blood pressure is going to tell you about your left kidney and adrenal, whereas the right side of the body, when you take your blood pressure, is going to tell you about the condition of your right kidney and adrenal. So these are some of the ways that you can determine whether or not you have kidney filtration.
Okay, wonderful. And in addition to that, you can just watch Ivana's previous webinars, because she talked about this subject a lot.
Yes.
So yeah. Okay, cool. Ravitali is asking what is the name of the other two herbs besides Cystus incanus?
Boswellia and Japanese knotweed. Knotweed is a knot, like tying a knot. K-N-O-T. Okay.
Good.
Put it in the chat so you can see the spelling.
Okay, Ivana. Now I'm reading some of the questions from which I received in the group, in the fasting group, and then I forwarded them to you. So, but I will just read them aloud. So, someone is asking, thanks, Arik. question to our dear Ivana on gallbladder stones, how to flush them out naturally. Also, what else needs to be done so that they don't form again?
Well, the reason you get gallstones is for kidney function, which results in subpar bile. Kidney stones, gallstones, form when there's too much cholesterol in the bile, right? So that lipid lipoprotein sort of coagulates. There's not enough bile salts to dilute it. And then these gallstones get stuck in your bile duct, right? So the two herbs that are excellent for this are the Chinese gold coin grass and Chanca piedra. Now, another thing that I have recently been recommending to people is called TUDCA. And TUDCA is an acronym for toro urso dioxycholic acid. And TUDCA is one of the bile acids that are present in bile that is extremely beneficial and that we make in very small amounts. Now, I never recommended people take things like ox bile, because in the ox bile, TUDCA is present only in minute amounts. But what TUDCA does is it emulsifies the stones and it improves bile quality. How taking a bile salt is different from digestive enzymes is that we need to constantly produce digestive enzymes. And if we start taking them artificially, the pancreas is going to stop making them. This is not the case with bile because 95% of our bile is recycled back into the body. So we actually lose very little bile. And a lot of people have a poor genetic blueprint for bile. So there's a chemical imbalance where the bile that is produced is of very poor quality. Now, what happens in these cases when people get gallstones that get backed up in their gallbladder and get stuck in their bile duct is that liver keeps backing up with toxins because it cannot release the bile, right? So the bile and the toxins that build up in the liver actually get into the bloodstream. Now, that bile is going to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain. And when that contaminated bile gets into the brain, it suppresses the HPA axis. HPA axis being your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. So not only is your digestion impaired, not only are you not able to conjugate chemistry, because that's what the liver does, and neutralize toxins and break them down into less toxic compounds, but you're actually affecting your entire endocrine axis. So your whole hormonal system is out of whack, and all because of the poor liver function. So I'm actually going to show you because I saw the question. So this is TUDCA. This is the brand that I take, but there are others. You just want to get something that doesn't have sort of any additives, preservatives, or chemicals. And you take this on an empty stomach, at least an hour away from any food, or other supplements, unless the only thing you can combine it with is like systemic enzymes that you might be taking for, you know, breaking down of the biofilms. Another thing I recommend for this problem would be castor oil packs over the liver area, because castor oil packs stimulate the liver and they improve lipid absorption. That castor oil gets absorbed actually through the skin into the liver and improves the function of the liver and the gallbladder, and helps to dilute some of those cholesterol stones. And another thing I would recommend is the abdominal massage that was shown by Dr. Filanov in one of the webinars that I actually translated for the dry fast group. And that is something that you can find on the dry fast group YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think they even took it out, like they made a special video only about that. So yeah, yeah. Okay, very good. Now another question was, what a vegan can include in her diet in the form of herbs, veggies, or fruits for consuming collagen, as doctors advise collagen 1 and 3, but both are from animal source.
There is no such thing as plant collagen. It simply does not exist. By definition, collagen is an animal tissue matrix. And by animal, when I say animal, I also include humans in that. Animals and humans produce collagen in their body as a result of consuming certain plants. So collagen is actually a type of connective tissue that is made up of 19 different peptides. And peptides are complex chains of amino acids. So you cannot find vegetable or plant sources of collagen because they don't exist. What you have to do is you can consume certain plants that are rich in compounds that your body can then use to produce collagen. Because when you consume collagen of animal nature, you're taking basically hoofs and cartilage from their bones. That's what you're consuming. But those body parts are made by those animals as a result of consumption of grass and other such things. All right. So, and that's the same thing that I would recommend to you. Consume things like alfalfa leaf juice, sea moss that is loaded with minerals and trace minerals. And these are all organic compounds. Again, do not take isolates, do not take supplements. Take something that's a part of an organic structure of the plant. And you're going to get plenty because those are biocompatible. So that's all you got to do. And you can add, a superfood blend. Things like royal jelly. And I'm going to say again, alfalfa leaf juice. There are certain plants that are really, really high in minerals, things that contain silica, like horsetail. But they're already, ready-made formulas that you can add to your smoothie, like Dr. Morse's superfood blends. And if you want, you can look up, go online and just look up what's in them and just source those materials individually.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Then another question. My 13-year-old son is tired, lethargic in the morning. He has trouble waking up and focusing in school. As the day goes on, he is more active. At night, he has trouble falling asleep. How to fix this?
So this is the adrenal cortex dysfunction, and specifically the dysregulation of cortisol. cortisol is the hormone that should be the highest in the morning. And cortisol is what gives us energy, right? It perks us up. We're ready to go. But in some people, this process is reversed, where, you know, their cortisol is at its lowest point in the morning and then starts to build very slowly throughout the day and reaches its peak at night when you should be going to sleep. But now you're all like tired and wired. So for this person, I would recommend adaptogenic herbs, specifically holy basil and lemon balm. Lemon balm does not shut down cortisol production, but it sort of regulates it. And the thing about adaptogens is that they don't stimulate and they don't subdue, but they help your glands do what needs to be done. Now, another thing is that be sure that the child has exposure to direct sunlight, or at least indirect sunlight, especially to the eye, because that's what stimulates the pineal gland and regulates the circadian biorhythms. The body sort of has to get on track that when the sun is shining, we're making these neurotransmitters. And after a certain period of time, the sun stops shining, then we are now making melatonin, making other types of neurotransmitters. Also, look at the stress levels of this child, because this is a result of adrenal exhaustion. And stress can be mental, emotional, or physical. When the body continuously is pumping out anti-inflammatory hormones, or hormones that, you know, when we're forcing the body to produce energy and we take supplements, or we stay up past the time that we should. So we're forcing our adrenals to go into overdrive, and we sort of reset the clock, where instead of, you know, we're supposed to be down at this time, but because we keep going, we're no longer now going down this time, but it's almost like we restart the cycle. So the whole thing is shifted by a cycle. So this is not just herbs, but also adjustment of habits. Looking at the stress levels. Is the child undergoing stress at school, at home? Okay. Are there any physiological problems that are creating a similar stress and initiating the fight or flight response in the body? Now, for those who cannot sleep, and you know, the lemon balm, I would not start taking till about, you know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can take it either as a tincture or start drinking lemon balm tea, right? Because lemon balm is really, really relaxing. So you want to start to relax the system in the second part of the day and get it to calm down and prepare for the nighttime. And once you start to develop the habit of sleeping at the right time, then that cortisol production is going to turn itself around. Now, if somebody really cannot sleep, then the next thing I would recommend is magnolia bark. Now, magnolia bark will make you drowsy, so don't take it, you know, while you're at school, you're at work and stuff like that. Take it like an hour before you want to go to bed. Another thing that magnolia bark does, it's extremely effective for anxiety and panic attacks. In studies, it was shown is as effective, if not more effective, than pharmaceutical anti-anxiety drugs. And another benefit of magnolia bark is that it also kills liver flukes. So you get an added benefit there. Okay?
Amazing. Another question, Ivana. If someone has a weak liver, are liver flushes recommended?
It depends. It depends. I believe this is a question for Connie, right?
I don't know, because it's when it's
And I will
forwarded,
answer it.
probably.
The answer is only for Connie because I know Connie. I have worked with Connie, and I know
Okay.
that she has done a lot of work where she is now ready for that. Somebody's coming in who has gallstone and stuff like that, absolutely not. Do not do liver flushes. And especially when you have, you know, gallbladder attacks and stuff like that, you never want to do a liver flush. So you have to prepare the liver. Things like milk thistle is actually another great herb to break down gallstones. You want to do these massages, you know, you want to take the herbs that regenerate the liver. Taking Tadka is going to do it. Now, I like the liver flush that is recommended by Dr. Filanov with castor oil, because I find it to be extremely, extremely gentle, at least from my experience. It does not cause, you know, painful reactions. It's much more palatable than olive oil. And it's much more simple, because I also do not recommend that people take Epsom salt. All right. Taking herbs like coptis and curcumin will also open up and dilate the bile ducts. So this liver flush with castor oil requires 1 milligram of organic hexane-free castor oil. Get the kind that comes in a glass jar. So 1 milligram per 1 kilogram of weight. So if I weigh 50 kilos, I'm going to need 50 milligrams of castor oil. And whatever the amount of that castor oil is, you're going to need half of that in lemon juice. So if I have 50 milligrams of castor oil, I need 25 milligrams of lemon juice. You mix the oil and juice together. You warm them up. This has to be drunk when it's warm. So you warm it up, and then you drink it as quickly as possible while standing up. Now, obviously, I've skipped a couple of steps where you do not eat on the day of the flush. If you're going to do a flush for at least a week, you're preparing with apple juice or pear juice, because they are rich in malic acid, which help to emulsify the stones, help to open up and relax the liver, to flush the liver, right? So the implication is that you have done the preparation. And if you go and watch the video that Filanov, again, talks about this particular liver flush, he tells you how to prepare for it. So, and it's the same way you would prepare for Moritz's, you know, liver flush. So after you drink the mixture, you lie down on your right side for at least 20 minutes and you don't move very much. After that, you can get up and sort of have a nice light day, and do this on your day off, because castor oil has a laxative effect. So it's a twofer. It's going to clean out your intestines, but it will also stimulate the liver. So you can do it, but it's not necessary, because liver is actually quite easy to regenerate. And specifically Tadka in studies has been shown that over 2 months of taking Tadka, the liver regenerates. The liver cells themselves regenerate. It flushes the liver, it cleans it, it helps it heal.
Okay, great. Another question also regarding the liver. Ivana question, what to do for liver pain on a fruit diet? That's how the question is
If
phrased.
you have pain in the liver, that means you have congestion. You can have stones in the liver that are basically being shaken loose, right? And you're feeling them, you know, the sharp edges press against tissue. Or, you know, these stones are in your gallbladder or stuck in your your bile duct. So again, the only thing to get rid of this pain is you have to break up the stones and the congestion of the liver by following the steps I had already outlined and taking those herbs. And of course, remember that castor oil packs are very good for pain.
Okay, wonderful. Another question, I follow a raw food diet, now a fruit-based juice feast. Usually I pee at least once during the sleep. Is this a sign of a weak kidney or bladder? What could be possible causes? Will it get better over time if I stay on mostly fruitarian track? Thank you.
It can be a sign of weak kidneys, most definitely, but it also depends how late, you know, does this person drink. If you drink, you know, very close to going to bed and a large enough amount, then it's to be expected that you're going to get up to empty your bladder at some point. But if you have weak kidneys and you have fluid that's sort of collecting in your lower extremities, and the kidneys are too weak to pump that fluid out, they can't do it until you are in a supine position where your legs are on the same level as the kidneys. And that makes the job of the kidneys easier. And that it would be the only time they can actually get rid of some of that fluid. This is something that I deal with. So yes, this is a sign of weak kidneys.
Okay. And then now a few questions from Ravital. I think that she already asked one of those, but she's asking in regards to a grapes, lemon, ginger juice fast. Would you recommend any other side juices for someone with low adrenals? I would like to go on these mono juices for an extended time, but my salt cravings make it seem impossible to do without some celery or cucumber juice. Do these simple green juices slow the effectiveness of a fast when trying to wake up the kidneys?
Well, celery juice specifically is an excellent adrenal tonic because it contains very specific sodium clusters that help regulate the adrenals. Now, if you were to make comparisons between detox that you're going to get on just the grape juice versus adding a celery juice, it will slow things down a tad, but relatively speaking, you're still getting phenomenal detox. Now, the way to work on your salt cravings is by continuing to take adrenal herbs. You have to keep working on the adrenals, because once the adrenals are online and working properly, you're not going to have the salt cravings. What I find helps here is the licorice root tincture, which is a great tonic for the adrenal cortex, and because it's the adrenal cortex that produces aldosterone, which in turn regulates sodium in the body. So when you have salt cravings, it's because you're not making enough aldosterone and your sodium is too low. So the only way to get out of this is to get your adrenals healed, which can take a very long time. So if you have to have a celery juice, fine, you're still going to get phenomenal detox. And it's great for your liver. It's great for your GI tract. It increases hydrochloric acid. It sets up the right environment for to support healthy microbiome. So I don't have a problem with it. And do it make it the first juice of the day, because what it does, it actually opens up your digestion and elimination. It turns on your GI tract. And do it pure, just celery juice alone. And then the rest of the day, drink your grape juice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, then she's asking about the mineral supplement. I think you already answered her question about supplements. And then her third question, when dealing with very low thyroid, what dosage of kelp or bladder wrack is recommended? Most bottles of powdered sea veggies seem to indicate the importance of only one capsule or not overdoing dosage. Thank you. And thank you for any feedback on those from anyone with experience. Okay, so that's the question.
My personal experience, because I did the recommended dosage and it was getting me nowhere. I did not see significant changes until I got off of salt completely, and then I was using kelp as a way to add saltiness to my salad. And at that point, I had increased my dosage somewhere between teaspoon to a tablespoon daily. And this is when I saw tremendous movement. So the amount that's recommended for me has never been enough. I always felt sluggish. I wasn't going anywhere. When I started to take, and remember, kelp, you can't overdose on kelp any more than you can overdose on, I don't know, kale or zucchini. I mean, it's food. You understand, what your body doesn't need, it will discard, because these are not isolated chemicals. It's not like taking an iodine supplement. It's very different. So the first things that happened fairly quickly, less than a week probably, I noticed the bowel movements, where as soon as I ate, boom, you go to the bathroom. As many times as you eat, you immediately go to the bathroom. The second thing that surprised me was sleep. I started to sleep like a baby. Not only that, my dreams and my out-of-body experiences became really intense and vivid. Why? Because iodine displaces chemicals like chlorine and fluoride from the pineal gland. So it actually helps you to detoxify the pineal gland, which is the gland that's responsible for sleep, which is the gland that connects you to the higher realms, to your higher consciousness. And I saw that connection very quickly. So what I recommend to people, and I don't say like stay on this amount forever. It's almost like you do the initial loading, where you start with a teaspoon and then you go up to a tablespoon and you stay on that amount, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. And then you go back to teaspoon, and then you start to cut that in half and see how, and just gauge by the way you feel if you need to go back on a higher dose or if you need to adjust it to lower. But the idea is that eventually you get to a place where you're good with taking with, that recommended dose, which since I buy kelp in bulk in like 1 pound bags, the serving, I believe, is like 1/8 of a teaspoon. I mean, for me, that was nothing. That didn't even register in my body. But once I started to take, a teaspoon or more, I was like, whoa, my body was responding. So this is my personal experience. Is it going to work the same for everybody? I don't know.
Okay.
This is what I discovered accidentally because I'm a salt fiend and I was trying to replace salt with kelp. And I went a little overboard and I saw that, oh my God, I feel good. I have energy, I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming, I'm going to the bathroom great. So, you know, try it, see what happens.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Another question. Someone says, I also have questions for Ivana. Ivana, what do you recommend in terms of supplements or herbs on a regular basis if you are raw vegan and still working on cleaning your gut and liver, trying to get your kidneys to filter and trying to strengthen your glands? Would you recommend taking vitamins D and B12 on a regular basis? How much and for how long? What do you recommend to take in order to strengthen the bones? What other supplements or herbs would you recommend in order to get all the nutrients in terms of vitamins and minerals if you are raw vegan? What other treatments would you recommend to clean the gut, liver, and kidneys and strengthen the glands and bones? Thank you very much. I'm very happy and looking forward to the webinar this Friday with you. Okay.
All right. So I already talked about D3 and B12, and I already talked about the minerals. I mean, at this point, I don't want to beat the dead horse. You can just rewind this webinar and go back and re-listen to that. Now, in terms of cleaning the gut, what I discovered 4 years into this lifestyle, that cleaning gut seems to be a never-ending process. It's like a bottomless pit. There's just more shit and more shit, pardon my French, and it just seems to never go away. The only way to truly clean your gut is by going on a solid food vacation, period. You cannot clean your gut while you're eating solid food. Sorry, guys. It might take you 10 years to get there. This is how you're going to go there. For 3 years, I was on fruits, pounding all the herbs, GI cleansing herbs, GI broom for 3 years, nothing but fruits. And then I go on an 85-day juice feast, and I am shocked to find out what's coming out of me. So here I am 3 years in, I'm thinking that I've cleaned up my gut. Wrong. So now what I find very effective is water fasting intermittently with certain herbs. A lot of people do intermittent dry fasting. And I'm going to give you an opinion that some of you might find unpopular, but this is the truth. Intermittently dry fasting for 16 to 18 hours is a big fat waste of time. You accomplish absolutely nothing by dry fasting, simply because of how the mechanism of dry fasting works. So what I found to be more effective is to drink water and then take certain herbs. So the way I would do it, you wake up in the morning, you start with the herb called mimosa pudica seed. So in the window that you're awake, from the morning you wake up, every 2 hours, you're taking at least 2,000 milligrams of mimosa pudica with a full glass of water. Every 2 hours, 2 pills of mimosa pudica, assuming they're 1,000 milligrams each. You keep doing that. And you do that throughout your fasting window until you are 3 hours away from your first meal. And this could even be a smoothie or a fruit. It doesn't even have to be juice. I found that this works still. So when you're 3 hours away from that first intake of food, whatever it may be it liquid or solid, but an hour after your last dose of mimosa pudica, what you do is you take GI broom, which is a binder. So you take GI broom, and then 2 hours later, you have your meal. What this does is that mimosa pudica is very gelatinous and sticky. And what it does is it coats the walls of your intestines, sort of grabbing onto and trapping the residues and, you know, plaque, whatever that may be. So by constantly supplying it every hour with lots of water, because mimosa pudica is going to pull that water to help it expand. Mimosa pudica does not get digested or absorbed in your body. It is a type of binder, but it happens to be super sticky. What it also does is it traps and removes parasites, more specifically worms. So once you've sort of primed the pump and you laid, you know, the trap down with the mimosa pudica, then you take your GI broom, which is an intestinal scrubber. And GI broom has to be taken 2 hours away from food or other herbs or supplements, except for the mimosa pudica. You can wait an hour after you take your last dose, because mimosa pudica is also a binder, doesn't get absorbed, so you don't lose much by, you know, taking it so close with the GI broom. And then 2 hours after the GI broom, you take your meal, preferably, you know, a juice meal, right? And then about 3 hours after your last meal, whatever, you know, your window may be, you take a capsule with 4 drops of fully frozen organic castor oil. So you take that at least 3 hours after you had your last meal on an empty stomach before bed. What this does is that taking the castor oil frozen in this way allows it to bypass most of your small intestine, and it doesn't break up and become active until it reaches the last portion of your small intestine and the first portion of your large intestine. And because it bypasses digestion, it does not act as a laxative. But what it does do, it starts to pull on the plaque in your large intestine. And so it's going to do that throughout the night while it's moving, you know, through your large intestine, through your colon. So now you have sort of loosened that plaque up. When you wake up, you start taking mimosa pudica, which now is going to sort of trap and stick to that loosened up plaque. Then you follow it up with GI broom, which helps to pull it off the wall. And believe me when I tell you, you're going to be pulling plaque out of your body. I have seen tremendous results with myself personally, doing it this way. But if you want to keep eating and taking herbs, strap yourself down for another 10 years, because that's how long it's going to take.
Very good.
You cannot clean out your GI tract while you keep putting food in it. It's like trying to do a spring clean in your house while you're having 50 people over for a party that are eating, dancing, and making a mess. It's not possible.
Amazing, amazing. Okay. Then another person is asking, what are the steps for detox? What should we address first and make sure it's working before moving to the next step or organ? What are the different tests for different parts of the body to check if they're working properly or not? For example, urine test for kidney filtering. So we talked a lot about that during different webinars.
So yeah, I already talked about kidney filtration again, beating the dead horse here. There's only so many times that we can repeat the same stuff. I don't want to waste time on that. and I already talked about it today.
Yeah.
To
So
low
and also about the steps for detox. I think we talked about detox a lot.
Same thing. First things are always bowels and kidneys. There are 4 types of herbs you always start with: GI cleansers, kidney herbs, adrenal herbs, and lymphatic, but capsules only. Capsules or powders. In the initial stages, do not take liquid tinctures when it comes to lymphatic herbs, because a capsule or a powder is going to pull on the intestinal wall and loosen up that old waste. But when you take a tincture, it goes into the entire system, into all cells, and it stirs up the lymph. And if your kidneys are not filtering, now you have intoxication and you're going to feel very sick. So do not move to liquid lymphatics until you've got good kidney filtration. Now, you don't need tests or, blood work, anything like that, to determine if your organs are working. How do you feel? Are you digesting food? Are you constipated? This is how you know, are your organs working? Do you have energy? How do you feel? Now, Dr. Morse, which you can find on his website, but you have to become a member, has a self-assessment questionnaire. And this is the questionnaire that I give to my clients, which it has organized by different glandular and organ systems questions that help you determine whether or not you have a problem in that particular area. So symptomatology is much more accurate when it comes to assessing the state of your organs, glands, and other tissues than blood work. Blood work is not a good gauge of your physical condition. For example, I am currently taking care of a bedridden 98-year-old with dementia who has heart problems, who cannot eat, who can only feed through the feeding tube, who cannot swallow, who has high blood pressure, who cannot service himself in any way, shape, or form. But hey, his blood work is excellent. His son, who is ironically a nephrologist, which is a kidney specialist, likes to brag that if you didn't know any better and looked at his blood work, you'd think that you were looking at the blood work of a 20-year-old. So what does it matter? The man is incapacitated. So what if his blood work is great? My blood work looked good too, except for the kidney. It's not a good gauge, because the blood is the kitchen of the body and it has to be protected at all costs, because if the pH of the blood drops by even 0.5 percentage point, very bad things start to happen and death is imminent. So you're looking at the wrong system. So go by how you feel. Go become a member of Dr. Morse's group, access the questionnaire, fill it out, answer the questions, and you're going to have a pretty good idea as to, which glands, organs, and so on are in trouble.
Very good. Very good. We don't have many more questions, just a few last ones. We are more than 3 hours now into the webinar. Question for Ivana. What do you think about turpentine, MMS, and urine to clean parasites? Okay, urine, I think you also already told about it. Or what are your best ways to do it? Okay, so basically turpentine and MMS.
MMS is a sulfur, and I already talked about that sulfur is toxic to humans. It's extremely toxic, and it holds toxins in. And I have done every kind of sulfur, and I messed myself up in a big way by doing this. So please learn from my mistakes. Do not do it. Very bad. Sulfur is bad for us. Inorganic isolated sulfur is bad for us. And I already explained early in the webinar why. It binds metals. It's very sticky. It's toxic. It doesn't heal or cure anything. So disabuse yourself of the notion that sulfur is good for you. It's not. Turpentine is a paint thinner. You want to drink paint thinner? Okay. Is it going to kill parasites? Sure. But it might also kill you. You know, it's like chemo kills cancer. Sure, but it also kills you in the end. So is it worth it? Not a fan of turpentine. Would never recommend anybody to do it. My personal opinion, it's a horrible idea. As I said, I have a comprehensive protocol. If you would like to purchase, you can have it, where I give you so many herbs. I give you the formulas. I give you the step-by-step. You get everything there, from lime to biofilms to viruses to worms.
Wow.
But it's a very extensive list. There are formulas that are ready made, that are made by Dr. Moore's Cellular Botanicals. He has Parasite G, Parasite M, and it's always good to step up your parasite cleaning efforts during the full moon, because that is when parasites become more active. Okay. Also, go to my channel and watch my latest video, because I actually give you a piece of that protocol. I give you the fungal protocol, what to do, what to take. I give you the herbs. I give you, the things that break up biofilms. So you get at least that part.
Amazing.
And it's my latest, the latest video that I uploaded, I think 3 weeks ago. And it's a Q&A video that I did based on the questions that people submitted to me. They wrote in and said, these are my questions. And I sat down and I recorded the answers. So I already give you that. So you can go and look at that if you would like.
Yes, Ivana, definitely. We'll put the link to your channel below this video, so that people can just go there. Okay, and another one of the last questions. Question for Ivana: what is the meaning / solution for gray stools that started appearing on detoxing in kidneys that stop filtering on same detox too? The person detoxing has been juicing high fruit / salads and taking Dr. Morse's herbs, kit 1. There is a minimal quantity of cooked food. So that's the question.
Well, you see, I would have to ask a follow-up question. What kind of gray are we talking about? Because that makes a difference. Like if this is just a really light stool, it could be because you don't have enough bile, that is necessary to break down fats. There are other follow-up questions. They're like, are the stools normal? They're well formed? Are they running? Like, what is going on? There's more stuff there, but you don't just stop filtering. If you have filtration, it takes some doing to halt the filtration. And that would usually be introducing toxic substances into your body, some of them like heavy metals. All right, so what happens most of the time is that people start to get a little bit of sediment and they think that they have filtration. But what is happening is that they're getting some lymphatic movement in the kidneys themselves. You're not getting filtration of your lymphatic system. Your kidneys are discharging some of the crud that's been stuck in them and clogging them for a long time. Right? So you see a little pieces of that. Oh, you get a little sediment here, but it's not, you're not really filtering your system. You understand? You are discharging some of the garbage that's been clogging up your kidneys. And I talked about this in that video that's been reposted in the group, the difference between true filtration versus you're getting some movement in your kidneys. Also, sometimes it's not that you don't have filtration, it's that when your diet is clean, you're not creating so much acidic byproduct. So when you are raw, your urine is not going to have as much sediment. Sediment comes from mobilizing the old stuff. So another reason for this is that you're not actually mobilizing and breaking up that old stagnant lymph. And that's why you're not seeing any sediment. So it's not that there is no filtration, you're just not pulling lymph. And for that, you need movement, you need exercise, and you also need lymphatic herbs that are astringent and can break up that stagnant agglomerated lymph. And unless I can ask this person more questions, I can't really give you more than that.
Yeah, yeah. So any additional information, please contact Ivana personally.
Yes.
Now, a question for Ivana. Do you recommend stopping thyroid meds during dry fasting?
Well, by definition, if you're taking anything into your body, you're not dry fasting. You understand? Which means the processes that are going on in your body are not at all the processes that take place during a dry fast. So if you have to take the meds, then you might as well do a water fast with the meds. You understand? It also depends on how long is your dry fast. Because if your dry fast is only a day or two, it doesn't matter if you stop your meds for a couple of days. It's not going to have any catastrophically detrimental effects. You can just pick up when you break your fast. You see, so it all depends.
Okay, good
I'm
answer.
thinking to do a long fast, a prolonged fast.
How long is long?
11 days. I did 7.
Uh-huh.
And my TSH level went very, very high. But I'd like to
During
do
the fast or after the fast?
after the fast, or I don't know. I just had to check after the fast. And I had to, because I went down on half. I took half the medication after the fast, after the 7 days. And the level went up to 15. It should be on 0.2.
So it sounds to me like your thyroid values actually improved after the fast.
No, it went up. It went much too high.
So the function was diminished.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Look, it depends on how bad your thyroid condition is. I mean, I had really, really bad adrenals and I was hypothyroid. I wasn't on medication, but my thyroid was shot. And I was still dry fasting long periods of time. What happens is that you're going to feel weak. So the only thing you do is you monitor your heart rate. If it gets at or over 120 in a resting state and you cannot bring it down, just break your fast. So what I'm saying is don't, be so obsessed with having to do 11 days and push your body past what you can actually do or what it can do safely. The body will tell you where you need to stop.
I felt fine at 7 days and could have gone on.
So you can then go on. The thing is with dry fasting, you are in control because you're the one who can decide this is where I get off this ride. You understand? It's not like this being forced upon you when you're being starved to death. You're the one in control. So if you start to have problems and you know what that looks like for you when your thyroid starts to act up, then you can break it. But if you can keep going, then keep going.
Okay. Can I ask
Good.
another question?
Sure.
The doctor wants to remove my parathyroid
Oh, no. We do
because
not.
no, he says it's giving signals to release too much calcium in my blood.
So it's hyperparathyroidism.
Okay.
And why do glands go hyper? Because they're overstimulated by acids or by some other toxins. And the only thing you do for this gland is that you detox it.
Okay.
The stupidity of cutting glands out, like, it's something, it's like, it's not like clipping a toenail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just don't understand. You normalize the gland.
So is it a dry fast?
Dry fast will do it, absolutely. And heavy detox, you have to drain the head. The only way to drain the head, which means your thyroid, your parathyroid, is by cleaning up your transverse colon and parts of your small intestine.
Okay.
That is the only way, because the acids are actually reverberating back from your gut. Because every single organ and gland is plugged into your intestines through nerve and lymphatic channels. Now, I would also like to see, your eyes, to see if there's any reflexive fibers there or transversals, to see if the gland is acute, if there's actual weakness in the gland. But when the gland is overactive, you do not put any herbs onto it. You do not go on glandulars. All you do is detox. Now, another important thing to understand is that both your thyroid and parathyroid are regulated by the pituitary, and the pituitary in turn is regulated by the hypothalamus. So some of these problems that people have with their glands are not the problems with the glands themselves. These are secondary problems because they're caused by either excessive signaling by the parathyroid or by lack of signaling by the parathyroid. And the only way I could tell the difference is by looking at your eyes.
So it's a pituitary I have to heal?
Not necessarily, because you're telling me, because look at what's happening here. You have the thyroid that's hypoactive, right?
Yeah.
Yet your parathyroid is hyperactive.
Yes.
So if that was your pituitary, then it's plausible that your thyroid would not be hypoactive unless it is so genetically degraded that even, excessive signaling by the pituitary can't get it to come up to the basic level. So it may just be that you have a severe weakness in there. But again, I would have to see your eyes. But for any hyperactivity, it's detox only.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very
Ivana,
much.
so two last questions, and we are not going to take more because it's really late now.
Yeah.
So please, could you ask Ivana about the folic acid and why doctors say it's mandatory for pregnancy? I think it's a lie, and everything else about synthetic vitamins. Okay, we addressed it, but folic acid in relation to pregnancy.
I agree. I mean, folate is present in so many fruits and vegetables. You can just Google. So the problem is, again, with utilization. Are you utilizing folate that's already present in your fruits and vegetables? And outside of calcium, which is the purview of your parathyroid and thyroid, the rest of the minerals and nutrients are utilized with the help of the adrenal glands. So look at whether or not you have an issue there. Another problem could be malabsorption, or people have problems with digestion, because understand that for your body to get the nutrients in and make any use of them, you have to have digestion, which is performed by the stomach, liver, and the pancreas. If you have a problem in any of these areas, that means that you're in trouble from the very beginning. If you can't digest something, you certainly are not going to absorb it. Then the second step is the absorption of these digested nutrients through the intestinal wall. If that wall is backed up with mucus, waste, and interstitially backed up with lymph, you cannot absorb that nutrition. So it's not a fact, it's not a problem that you don't have enough coming in, is that you can't absorb it. It has no pathway to get absorbed into your system. Now, the third step is if, let's say, you do have semi-decent absorption. So now it's not enough for you to just absorb these nutrients, but you need catalysts. You need certain hormones so that enable your body to actually use them. Certain carriers to take them to this organ, to that organ. And for this, you need adrenal function. And specifically for calcium, you need thyroid and parathyroid function. So you have to look at these three steps before actually considering whether or not you need to supplement anything. And the only way to fix problems with the first three steps is by fixing elimination, because all of these problems that you might have with digestion, absorption, and utilization stem from clogged GI tract, which affects the function of all the other glands and organs.
Mm-hmm. Very good, very good. And the last one, Ivana, also we partially addressed it today, but a person says, I wish to know which metals, like such as iron, zinc, etc., and what quantity should we have in our bodies? So we haven't talked about quantity, I think. But you definitely mentioned the metals themselves.
I don't know the exact quantities. What I do know is that if you get these metals into your system by consuming things like sea moss, alfalfa leaf juice, you're not going to get an overload on them. Okay? You're going to get enough and you're not going to get too much. Mm-hmm. The only problem is when you start to supplement with synthetic isolates, or even natural things, like I said, shilajit or fulvic or humic acid, where you don't know what's in it, you don't know the real quantities per serving because they're not standardized and so on. So I always err on the side of caution. You don't need synthetic minerals and metals. You can get them from all the fruits and vegetables. If you are deficient, then the problem is not the diet. The problem is either digestion, absorption, or utilization. Or you may have a biofilm problem where the pathogens are diverting the minerals and robbing you of these nutrients. That can happen too.
Okay. Okay, that's it, guys. So that's it. We are going to wrap it up very, very soon. And towards the end, Ivana, so I will ask you my standard question. So could you please tell us about your services and in terms of, in relation to everything that you talked about today, what kind of help you could provide to the people personally?
Well, I am a detox coach. If you go onto my YouTube channel, my website, you're going to see a bunch of videos where I talk about detoxification, about specific problems and things you can do to get you to a healthier state. I also do iridology reports. Now, I did raise my prices on iridology alone because my iridology reports run over 100 pages, and it's an insane amount of work. So I cannot work, all week to write a 100-page iridology report for $280. So I cannot do that anymore. Okay, so I had to raise the prices. And if it's too expensive for you, then I just rather not do it because it eats up my whole week. And then I work for a minute amount of money, expending too much energy. So I also do iridology consults like this, where it's not written, but I tell you the stuff, right? So you can do that. I also do emotional work. And I've really gotten to a new level with emotional work lately because I've been studying and incorporating neurolinguistic programming, which is extremely quick and effective. People are in awe, how quickly they can solve their problems that they have had for 30 years, for 40 years.
Wow.
They can be gone like this in 10 minutes. And I don't even know the content of the problem. I don't even care what happened because it's not about that. It's about the process of how you create the problem. All right. So once we understand that, we can change that process and shift things around to stop you from recreating the same problem and get you to create something better and more constructive. So this has been a very exciting sort of stage in my development as a coach, because, I used to work with things that took a longer time, and it was, more focused on what happened, when did this happen, why do you think this happened, like the way a therapist works.
Yeah.
And the problem is you can be in therapy for 30 years and know your problem inside and out and still have the problem. And you go, well, what is the point? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the new way I work is, it's almost like giving a person amnesia. We leave that in the past. We don't revisit it. It doesn't matter how it happened. It doesn't matter because it's irrelevant, because it's no longer happening. Why are you bringing the past into the present?
Right. And
you're basically re-traumatizing yourself all over again. How does that help you? It doesn't. So, this is a very exciting and novel approach for me, because I'm also trying things on myself and I'm trying things on clients, and it's really successful, and it's quite amazing. So this is something I'm very excited to do and to talk about. And you can contact me through my website. You can contact me through the email. It's posted. If you go on my YouTube channel, my email, my contact information is plastered all over the place. If we are in the same fasting group, you can contact me through WhatsApp. What I do want people to know is that please do not contact me for free consultations. I do not have the time and I do not have the interest. I work 12-hour days doing very difficult work, not just physically, but emotionally. Like I said, I take care of, being a caretaker for somebody, where I am, there for that person who is not mobile. So when I get home, the last thing is on my mind is now trying to figure out somebody else's problem. Okay. So unless you are going to pay me for my time, I'd rather put my feet up and relax. I mean, I literally had other coaches, so-called coaches, contact me and ask me to revise their program, read it, revise it, edit it for them for free so that they can go and sell it for money. So, I am drawing more strict boundaries, and this is also part of my self-healing. Where, you know, I have to say, this is where I draw the line. This you have to respect my boundary. I am happy to help. This is why I do these webinars. I just recently did a video where I answered a bunch of questions for people. It took me nearly 3 hours to do that. And I answered them in great detail. So this is how I give back, but I do it on my own time and at my own availability. But when people continuously keep coming to me and asking me for things, and then they get upset because, you know, I don't deliver what they want, and then they call me names and this and that, it's not nice, it's counterproductive, and it does not make me want to help you more. All right. So everybody here, I assume, has a job. And if your boss kept asking you to do things without paying you, you will stop showing up for the job, right? So this is just common sense courtesy. I'm happy to help. There's information that I put out that's available. If you cannot make sense of it on your own, you need additional help, then I'm going to charge you a service fee. The same way, you know, you pay your hairdresser, you pay your babysitter and stuff like that. So, you know, don't get upset when you start contacting me on WhatsApp and Facebook and you tell me, you write me a long essay, this is what's happening, this is my problem, what can I do about it? And I said, you can schedule an appointment. That's what you can do about it.
Absolutely.
Because, because for me to even read that stuff, I have to stop and give up doing something for myself, right? Because I cannot be entertaining and helping you while at the same time I'm doing laundry or doing whatever for myself. That means doing this costs me time, costs me money, costs me, you know, enjoyment with family, loved ones. And if I have to choose between me, I'm always going to choose me. So this is just, I'm telling people, do not get upset if this is how you approach me, that I might not make myself available to you. All right. But the work that I do is thorough. I am very good at what I do because I am very good at finding solutions. Like I always say, my superpower is finding stuff out. I don't know everything. I don't know most of anything. But if I need to find something out, I am in that alignment where information just comes to me. I get downloaded, I go, oh, I know where to look, and I will find it. If you look at other channels, other coaches, I don't see them talk about these things. I don't see them offering this information. And this is all done through experience. Yes, somebody may have taken a level 1 online course and now, you know, they're practicing as a coach. But unless you've gone through something, and I do stuff on myself. If I'm telling you don't take this because it's bad, it's because I have done it. And I can tell you that it kicked my ass in a very bad way. And then I had to crawl and dig myself out of a hole. So if I tell you to take something or not to take something, it's because I have tried it. I have done it. And I have worked out what's good, what's not so good. So, and that's the only way you really learn. And so that's what I have to offer. I may not be for everybody, but if you do work with me, I always give you 100% and more. I always show up for the people. I always give my best, and I always give you actually more than you expect. So if you resonate with the information, how I present it, then come on in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ivana. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying. It is so important to clarify this so that people don't have exaggerated expectation of something that you cannot deliver. Like, and it totally makes sense what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, I'm not a magician. The person has to be the one to do the work. I cannot want someone to get better more than they do. I recently worked with someone who has cancer and who had done chemo, and I put the person on the protocol. Oh, it's too hard. I'd rather die. Okay. I'm okay with that. You understand? I'm not here to pull anybody out to the living side. I've seen the other side. It's way better than anything we have going on here. So I am not someone who will force anybody or myself to hold on to this life with bloody fingernails. Transition is beautiful. Yes. Whatever comes after is more beautiful. I'm not going to force anybody. If this is too hard for you, my job is to give you the options, explain to you what happens, what the consequences of your choices are, and then you make your own choices. But I am not responsible for your journey. I am not responsible for your results, only you are. It's not magic. And let me tell you, I've gotten my ass kicked so many times on this journey, and I keep getting it kicked. I mean, in the last few weeks, I was like dying. So that's what it is. That's what it looks like. There is no, you go on a raw food diet and all of a sudden you're just magically better. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I wish it did.
Right.
But it isn't.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Ivana, so thank you so much for this enlightening webinar. It was really, really our pleasure to listen to you and to learn from you. Thank you so much. Look forward to meeting you again here in the future. And, hopefully many people will use this opportunity and contact you personally, will get helped by you, and really, really, really I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you for having me, Arik. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. It's you're doing such an amazing job, really, like life-saving, really, you're a real lifesaver.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, guys, so thank you very much to everyone who is present here. Thank you very much, Ivana, and you're great, guys. You're the light. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.